Hey, and welcome into this Friday edition of the UP Power Podcast. Keegan Cooper and Kevin McNulty with you. Keegan, spring has sprung. We have plenty of spring sports going on. NMU and Tech have already graduated, so they're out for the summer. We won't be covering any teams there until August, but let's get into it. Baseball and softball season here in the UP. We've been getting out to a bunch of games recently, and let's start with softball.
Yep.
And we know where to look.
Yeah.
When it comes to high school softball in the Upper Peninsula, because Escanaba and Gladstone both have incredible teams. Gladstone undefeated. I did the feature on Grayson LaMarche at Escanaba earlier this week. They only have 2 losses, none against fellow UP teams. When those two play, it's going to be fun. We've seen them both, and they are darn good there in Delta County.
Yeah, I mean, they're the complete package, and we'll start with the Eskimos. I mean, Grayson LaMarche on the mound. I mean, every time we see her on the mound, she's got double-digit strikeouts. They hit the ball. They steal bases. They play good defense when the ball's in play. They're kind of that complete package, and then when you have an all-star arm in the circle like Grayson LaMarche, it makes things a little bit easier. Gladstone, the same thing, too. Tia Schoen just recently signed with Grand Rapids, the Raiders. Great pitcher there as well. Gladstone also hits the ball. And what I like about both of these teams is the way that they're aggressive on the base pass.
Yep.
They're going to steal every base if they can. Pass ball, they're going to score. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to put a lot of runs up on the board. So if you want to compete with them or beat them, you've got to do the same thing. So it's been exciting to see those two teams early this season.
Absolutely. Another Brave recently signed to play softball at MIT. How about that? Lawrence Sundquist. We were down in Green Bay. It's sad to miss that signing ceremony, but congratulations to her. That's incredible. And, yeah, Gladstone undefeated, Esky looking good. And guess what, Keegan? They play on Tuesday. A doubleheader at Gladstone. I mean, going head-to-head, I think maybe we get a split. That's the downside to the baseball and softball teams here in the UP. You can kind of predict a sweep for almost every doubleheader. I would imagine if we had a percentage of the number of doubleheaders that ended in a sweep, it'd be somewhere in the 90s.
Yeah.
It kind of goes that way, but I don't expect that on Tuesday between Gladstone and Escanaba. High school baseball, we've seen a bunch of teams. I watched Negaunee and Kingsford play yesterday. I was really impressed by Negaunee. I was just telling you, doesn't look like there's a hole in their lineup, because to win game 1 against Kingsford, which they won 6-3, it was the 7, 8, 9 hitters coming through with 2 outs, driving in runs. That's something I love to see. You got to in low-scoring games, which we don't get a ton of maybe, you got to manufacture runs. You got to move runners over. Coach Sika at Negaunee had their 3-hitter or their 4-hitter lay down a bunt yesterday. He said, I've never laid down a bunt in my life, but that's what you got to do sometimes when you're in these tight games. Negaunee played really well, ends up sweeping the doubleheader against Kingsford, which was rolling previously. They've hit a little rough stretch here. But as we've talked about on this podcast, in Division 4, there's one team that stands out over the rest, and that's Norway.
Yep.
Yesterday, they win something like 13-1 in game 1, and I know game 2 was 22-3. They put up 22 runs on North Central. That Norway team, we'll be talking about them come June.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of the same scenario, kind of a comparison with Escanaba. They have an ace up their sleeve in Cole By. When he gets on the mound, you know that he's going to bring it. And then you think about the run support. I mean, 22 runs. I think any pitcher is going to be comfortable when you see 22 runs for your team up on the board too. And small ball, going back to that, that's a thing that you got to have in your arsenal, especially when you get into June and into the postseason. And these games are tight and runs are hard to come by, and you got to be the guy that moves the guy over, and maybe you lay one down and then everybody's safe. So, no, it's exciting to see that too. Escanaba and Gladstone, I think, will be in the conversation come district's time, and it's been fun to see Kingsford and Negaunee as well kind of go back and forth. There is no really top UP because I think anybody can beat anybody.
I would agree, yeah.
But, it just kind of depends on the day. But we'll have to see who comes out on top is the best.
Especially in baseball, it goes that way. You're just going to drop a few every once in a while, even if you're the best team. Now, a team that Norway had to go through in the postseason last year on their road down to East Lansing to the state finals, Jeffers And Jeffers has won 10 in a row. Yesterday, their senior on the mound, Cody Turner, throws a perfect game. 6 innings, 18 batters up, 18 batters down, 13 strikeouts against Ironwood. So the Jets are playing some really good baseball as well. We were talking about them during hockey season. Last year was a lot of the basketball players that won a district that were playing for the Jets on the baseball field. But that's another team to keep our eye on as we move forward. And let's look ahead to Saturday. You and I will both be covering different things. First, for you, the Candy Sweatkiss softball tournament in Eske. 8 teams are there. Three Rivers won it last year, beating Escanaba and Negaunee in the process, and they're back. It's an 8-team field. Should be fun. You're going to get there for the semifinals and championship. Leslie Delvaux, who played for Escanaba in the 2000s, is throwing out the first pitch before she's inducted into the UP Sports Hall of Fame. I will be going to that induction banquet on Saturday night. So softball in the morning and afternoon. 8 pretty solid teams. Even Escanaba's JV team is playing. That should be a fun Saturday, and can't be the weather we've had this week. Fingers crossed that it holds up.
No, yeah, same thing. It'll be exciting. Last year going to that tournament and seeing those teams turn out, it's some of the best softball that you're going to see, especially in the UP here. It's competitive, and I think that's what makes it fun, especially on a Saturday when it's like, hey, you're going to play multiple games, so it's not only how are you doing in the first game, how can you do in all of them games? Endurance comes into question too.
Right.
Like, how can you persevere? Because it's tough. It's tough to play back-to-back games. Maybe have a break here and there and go out and win a tournament on a Saturday. So that'll be exciting to see. If I had to give an edge to anybody, I think we're going to see Escanaba and Three Rivers in the championship. But you never know. Upset alert could happen.
Yeah, without Gladstone and Negaunee in the field, I like Escanaba. They're playing really well. Kind of a bad taste in their mouths from when they went downstate and did lose those 2 games. So that should be fun. Then the induction banquet at the UP Sports Hall of Fame Island Resort and Casino. I went last year. It was a lot of fun just catching up with some legends of the, from across the UP. People come from all over. Of course, they induct members from Sault Ste. Marie to Ironwood. There's no discriminating when it comes to who is on the ballot each year. 10 inductees this time around. Nick Baumgartner from Iron River, of course, gold medalist. He's going in. Jeff Olson, who won state championships as a football coach at Ishpeming, he's going in. Jamie Angeli, legendary basketball coach, he'll be there as well, getting inducted. So 10 people going in. The banquet should be fun to hear some of their stories from whether it's way back in the day or some younger inductees going in, like Leslie Delvaux, who can tell more recent stories. It's just fun to hear, what these legends have to say, whether they, were officials for the MHSAA. You have them going in. You have players and coaches alike as well. And then people who didn't necessarily do it here in the UP, like Nick Baumgartner, learned how to snowboard here, of course, but, took it to the worldwide stage, which was really cool. Let's talk about the worldwide stage. Okay, Chicago Pope.
Chicago Pope
Shocked the world yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think people
I was loving it.
Yeah, no, I don't think people expected it, but, Chicago Pope, Pope Leo is the next Pope, and, that's awesome.
It was a fun day on the internet.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, no one ever expected to see an American Pope. It was Italian guys forever. JP2 was Polish. Francis was from Argentina. Pope Leo now has spent a lot of his time in the clergy in South America, but he's from the south side of Chicago. And then you had baseball fans in Chicago fighting over him yesterday because there was a report that he was a Cubs fan, even though he's from the south side. And then it comes out, WGN talks to his brother. He's a White Sox fan. There's a picture of him at the 05 World Series. The Pope.
The Pope.
So my brother texted me. He was at Game 1 of the 2005 World Series, and he's like, I went to a game with the Pope.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's funny to think that that's, he's a guy who's a sports fan from Chicago, but was a priest and is a very holy guy, and that's why he's the next Pope.
Now he's the next Pope.
But he's from Chicago. still can't even wrap my head around that. My mom, all the Chicago Catholics, I was texting my aunt. They're all excited. So many memes.
Yeah.
Da Pope. Even Caleb Williams tweeted that. And then there was the insult stat about the Bears that Chicago got a Pope before they got a 4,000-yard passer.
Yeah.
Which is, a lot of people made that joke.
Yeah,
it's kind of a layup.
I saw that.
All right. Back to sports and not the Roman Catholic Church. We should touch on NMU lacrosse. Their season came to an end. Unfortunately, how it usually comes to an end.
Yeah, I mean,
because they played Grand Valley State in the GLIAC championship game. Third time this season they'd played Grand Valley, and they fall in the championship. They don't get into the NCAA tournament.
It's
kind of annoying when you play in a 4-team conference. You have a dominant team in that conference.
Yeah, and it's the third year in a row they played Concordia St. Paul and won, and then played Grand Valley State. And you know, I think too, when we kind of rewind to their season, they play Grand Valley at home. It's the closest that they played Grand Valley in a while, in a couple seasons. You know, they've had some close games, and they had a close game in the GLIAC championship. But you lose that one, 12-11 in overtime. You could flip a coin 500 times and get a different outcome in that game. And I think that when you lose that one, not that it went to their psyche, because they still won some games and had a good rest of the regular season, but that one gets to you.
For sure.
And it's really hard to beat
You could
the
even
game.
tell after the game.
Yeah.
Hearing Coach Makerzak talk about that one.
Yeah, that one hurts.
It stung them.
Because when you think about it, I mean, Concordia St. Paul is a rival of theirs. They play really competitive games.
And the other thing that Lindsay brings up with us, when they go to Concordia St. Paul and play on the road, it's mostly NMU fans because she recruits Minnesota like crazy. That's, maybe 3/4 of the roster is from Minnesota. So it's interesting when they go out there, and they deserve a lot of credit for that because they lost at CSP and then had them at home for the regular season finale on senior day, beat them then, had to go play them again 6 days later.
Yeah.
And beat them again.
Yeah, and it's tough. And I think GLIAC lacrosse has been around for 13 seasons. As it continues to expand, they've added a new team to the conference. I think that the tides will change, but it's hard. And we talk about this in any sport when you have, the top dogs that have been the top dogs forever in the Grand Valleys and the Ferrises. It's hard, but they are right there. I think that if anything, it showed that, and they're a young team. They'll get a lot of returners. They'll lose some, but they'll have an incoming freshman class. They're right there on the cusp of one of these times. Grand Valley's not going to win the GLIAC championship. It's going to be Northern Michigan or another team. But it's the last 3 years.
You're absolutely right. I'm laughing because Portillo's, I open up Twitter, and they are introducing a new sandwich called the Leo, which is the Chicago Pope. That's what we do. Josie Lukowski also is the GLIAC Attacker of the Year, so she had a great season. I mean, she was
dominant.
Best attacker in the GLIAC. I mean, she was scoring like crazy all season long. It's still a good season. It's just it ended the way that their seasons have been ending for the past couple of years, and that's the way it was. Now, a week ago this time, you and I put on our investigative journalism hats.
We did.
Because Matt Makerzak put out a tweet that he got his one guy out of the portal. He only needed one guy to fill out NMU men's basketball's roster for next year. And I'll read the tweet that sent us into our investigative rabbit hole that we went down. He says, "Portal taketh, portal giveth, sometimes from the same place." Crying, laughing emoji. Our one and only transfer on the 25-26 roster, and it's a good one. Hashtag boom. Hashtag Carolina Cats.
Yep.
That's a big one. Hashtag go Cats. So that got us thinking, who is it?
Yeah.
Who's the guy? Okay. So sometimes from the same place. That was clue number one.
Yep.
That it was from a school where a Wildcat had transferred. We thought this year We thought that meant this year.
Yeah.
And then clue number 2 was hashtag Carolina Cats. So that sent us, okay, who transferred to a school in the Carolinas? 2 states, that is, North Carolina and South Carolina, in case you forgot. There's 2 of them.
There's 2 of them.
Peter Lados transferred to, what was this university called?
I got to look it up.
Crocker?
Yeah.
Was it? This is good podcasting.
We're looking it up right now.
We were ill prepared. But this is an important part of the story and where we ended up deciding. Peter Lados. Where did he go?
Yes.
Coker,
Coker.
not Crocker.
The Cobras.
Yes, okay.
The Cobras.
So that's where we land.
That's where we land.
Peter Lados is going to Coker University in South Carolina. Who's Matt Mackerzak getting to come over from Coker to NMU?
So we go through the roster.
We go through the roster, who's in the portal, and then we land on their leading scorer, who looks like an NBA 2K My player, and that's a compliment, to Ian Blue.
Yeah.
We thought Ian Blue was the guy.
We watch his highlights. Dog.
I mean, just, again, he looks like an NBA 2K My player coming up to ball out at Northern Michigan, followed by Matt Mackerzak. So Coach had taken a look at him, at least, in the portal. And so finally we're like, all right. After about an hour, we spent about an hour on this trying to figure out who it was. I emailed Matt, is Ian Blue your guy? And he says no. And he immediately tells us who it is. Charlie Miller from Northern Iowa, and that's what tripped us up.
Yeah.
When we were looking at clue number 1, sometimes from the same place, we only looked at this year. Of course, the GLIAC Player of the Year, Max Weisbrod, transferred to Northern Iowa last year. So Charlie Miller is the guy coming over from Division I to Northern Michigan. He's a guard.
Which
I like it.
I like it. I think that they need it when you think about who won't be returning. Julian Smith, Gerald Gittens Jr., Derek Merwick.
Yep.
They're out. You need a guard. You need arguably a seasoned guard, a guy who has had some exposure playing in big games and stuff like that. He's a shooter too. They like that, and I think that he'll pair well. When you think about who is coming back right now, you got your bigs, Jackson Dudek, Sam Privet, Dylan Keel on that side of the court. Got a couple guys that are now going to be sophomores, junior guard play. Got to kind of add one to kind of complete the puzzle. And I agree. I think Charlie Miller will be a great fit in the green and gold uniforms. Excited to see it play out.
So that's who we got coming to Marquette, and that's it for NMU in the portal. And we should mention Tech beefing up its 2025 recruiting class, adding 2 more guys out of high school to join Jacob McPhee and one other recruit they have coming out of high school. So they're bolstering up for next year. And despite our speculation, perhaps, that one of the top players in Division II would opt to transfer to Division I for next year, that being Marcus Tomaszek. He's not going anywhere, as I get an ad on from our website. Marcus Tomaszek is back, and these guys they're adding, Connor Cameron from Alpena, not coming far, coming up to play in Houghton, and then Jesse Nepgezik from Wausau, also another Wisconsin recruit. They're both taller guards, 6'3" and 6'4", that I think they'll utilize a lot next year, probably without Pete Calcaterra. Kind of blanking on who else they're going to be missing. But Tomaszek back, you got to have guys around him, and Ty Fernholz was a guy as a freshman last year who really was a spark. And when he was out, they were a different team.
No, yeah, true. I think another one. Gabe
So Bittner
Smith.
has proved that's my point here, that freshmen can contribute on his team, and Fernholz was huge for them last year when they were regular season champions in the conference.
Yeah, another great kind of electric shooter. Like if he gets going, you're going to be in a bad spot. So you think about bringing in these freshmen. You return the reigning GLIAC player in the, GLIAC Player of the Year, arguably a top 5, if not top 3 Division II player in Marcus Tomaszek. Ty Fernholz, if you keep him healthy, you got 2 elite shooters that can score from pretty much anywhere. Gabe Smith coming in. You got these freshmen coming in that can be stretched the floor, run the floor. I think we'll see Michigan Tech run the floor a little bit more this year, or this upcoming season here in a few months.
I would agree. They're an athletic team, and I think both Northern and Tech will be picked atop the conference again. And that wasn't necessarily the case for Tech. They surprised a lot of people last year with the way they played. Lake State's going to lose a lot. Of course, they were an Elite 8 team this year, and that was because, they were vets, a lot of seniors on that team. So I don't know what they're going to look like, but they have a very good coach in Steve Headinga. So, we'll see what they come up with for next year. But NMU and Tech basketball looking up for next year.
Looking good. It's going to be exciting.
Absolutely. Let's switch gears. Go to the NBA playoffs.
The playoffs.
About that, and then we'll get to the Stanley Cup playoffs as well. We are in the conference semifinal round, and how about that to start things off? The road team winning every game. So we'll start in the West with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are off for like 10 days after sweeping the Grizzlies.
Which I think is a bad thing.
You want to start the rest versus rust argument?
Yeah.
Again?
I think it's, especially when you get into this point in the season, you're in the playoffs, you're hitting, think about, your shooting groove, right? You're shooting, you play 4 games, you win the series, you sweep them. You get into that groove. You look at how many points they scored in those games. I mean, it's, kind of atrocious.
In my mind, that series didn't even happen with the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
Because it was just over so quickly.
I mean, they led by 60 and 70 at
in
one
game
point.
1, yeah.
You get in that groove. Now you're not in the groove. Yes, you're still in the gym. Yes, you go to shoot around and practice, but it's not that game time scenario. So you get a little rusty.
I agree with you, and it was pretty evident in game 1 that, resting for that long did do them some damage, and of course they came back and blew out the Nuggets in game 2. But the way they collapsed, and of course we'll get to the Knicks and the Celtics, was so kind of reminiscent of the way the Cavs and the Celtics collapsed in the East in their game 1s, and it was just shocking the way they let that go, where they're fouling up 3. I agree that's a good strategy to foul up 3, but they're doing it immediately. So they did it for the final time with like 17 seconds left on the clock. And Jokic was on the bench because they were doing offense-defense. So they fouled to get Jokic back in the game. He had 42 and 22. The guy's the best player in the world.
Yeah.
And then Chet Holmgren misses the 2 free throws. They're still up 1 after the Nuggets foul. Nuggets don't have any timeouts. They go. Christian Brown, Russell Westbrook, totally thought Westbrook was going to go to the rim because he did that a couple times in the Clipper series where you're like, what are you doing? Don't do that.
Don't do that.
And the fact that they were only down 1 would make sense for them to try and get a 2. But no, the best shot is the open shot. Aaron Gordon for 3. Got it, dude. Then the Thunder don't have any timeouts, and that's the game. That game was awesome, and as I mentioned, game 2 was not a game.
No.
Denver was never in it. So they got to sit Jokic a little bit, and now it's tied at 1 going back to Denver, or to Denver for the first time. I think Oklahoma City will be just fine in this series, despite Jokic. I mean, Jokic is the best player in the world.
But it's hard. You can be the best player in the world, but Oklahoma City is going to...
They're not as deep as they were 2 years ago when they won the title, and the Thunder won 68 games.
And I think
they were 68 and 14.
Yeah, and I think, too, the rust is gone now. They've now
exactly.
played 2 games.
That's where I'm at. If you're taking the Golden State Warriors, for example, would they like 10 days off right now?
Probably,
Yes, because Steph Curry is hurt in that series, which is also tied at 1 heading to San Francisco. And the Timberwolves kind of no-showed in Game 1.
Yeah, and I know Anthony Edwards twisted ankle, something like that.
That was last night in Game 2, but Game 1, Ant only had 1 point in the first half. I believe he was 0 for 9 from the field in the first half, and he patted him in the second half when Minnesota just couldn't come back, even without Curry, who got hurt, strained that hamstring that's going to keep him out for a week. In the second quarter of that game, T-Wolves had nothing. They couldn't shoot, but granted, they couldn't shoot in Game 5 of the Lakers series, and they end up winning that game and taking the series. So that series tied at 1 as well. Both in the West are that way, heading to the lower seeds place for Games 3 and 4, because the Timberwolves shot better last night. Ant was more aggressive, and the Warriors without Steph, you need Jimmy Butler to carry you, and I just
don't know if he could. Yeah,
I don't know if he's capable of that. Draymond Green got another tech, so he's on the verge of being suspended. He needs to be careful. And then after the game, he was like, "You guys make me out to be this bad guy." It's like, you kind of demonstrate.
Some of the wrestling.
I don't think people say Draymond's a bad guy. It's just on the court.
Yeah, some of the moves that
he throws his limbs around.
Yeah.
And gets technical fouls left and right. What do you want people to say about you? On the court, at least. I like the Timberwolves in that series.
Yeah, I think the Warriors, it's a case of they're going to be the Warriors.
How long is Steph out?
Yeah, how long is Steph out? And if he comes back, is he healthy?
Yeah.
How much is he going to be able to provide? How much is Jimmy Butler going to be able to carry the load? Because if Steph's not 100%, Jimmy Butler needs to score 20 to 30 points in these
They're
games.
not, I mean, every championship team has role players that mean something to the championship, because you don't get it done without them. Look at the Bucks. Giannis is still a top 5 player in the world. They haven't gotten out of the first round the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So you need more, and that's the Nuggets. They have Jokic, but they don't have Jeff Green and Bruce Brown coming off the bench like they did 2 years ago. They were huge. So you look at the Warriors, Brandon Pajemski, buddy of Gerald Gittins, by the way, who was at MMU for senior day. That was really funny. He's had his moments. Kuminga hasn't really played, and he played a lot last night in Game 2, but he's not, moving the needle for the Warriors necessarily. You just think back to 2022, Draymond and Steph were 3 years younger. Steph's 37.
Yeah, so
and I don't remember him being hurt like this during the playoffs.
No.
So it's an unfortunate situation that he's hurt right now. Andrew Wiggins was huge in 2022. And then you go back to when they won 3 and 4 years and were one of the most dominant teams ever. Of course, they had KD in 17 and 18.
Yeah.
They're not that anymore.
No.
And, of course, Steph and Clay were in their prime then as well. Yeah. Let's go to the East, where, this is May Madness, because you usually don't get, upsets or close to upsets where we are now, with the road team winning both games in both of these series. And I thought the Cavs and Celtics were on a collision course for the Eastern Conference Finals. But you look at what the Pacers have done.
Tyrese Halliburton.
Tyrese Halliburton deserves respect.
Yeah.
And there was that athletic poll at the end of the regular season where players voted and named him the most overrated player in the league. And I disagree.
Yeah.
Based on what we've seen, Game 5 of the first series with the Bucks, and then through 2 games now in this Cleveland series, when Cleveland banged up, they've been without Darius Garland in both of these games. They were without Mobley in Game 2. And they were missing DeAndre Hunter in Game 2 as well. That's tough, because that puts a lot on Donovan Mitchell's plate. He had 48 points in Game 2, but it wasn't enough, because the Pacers, down 7 again in the final minute of the game, they find a way. Tyrese Halliburton doing a Walter Clayton. Remember that?
Yeah.
2 months ago in the Elite Eight, when he comes out to shoot the 3 and he nails it, ice in his veins. On the road, too. Just incredible stuff. And the other thing that's been pointed out about Halliburton, which I think is so important, he controls the pace of the game more than any other guard in the league. And some of the experts and analysts have said that he does that better than anyone since Steve Nash, who won 2 MVPs. I mean, that is so true because the Pacers, they make you play fast. And in the postseason especially, there's a lot more half-court offense, slow it down, we're going to actually run a set, a lot less fast breaking.
Run and gun
The Pacers don't do that, and I think Rick Carlisle, people forget he won a championship as a coach. He's a really good coach, and he played for the Celtics in the 80s. He knows what he's doing when it comes to disrupting some of the more talented teams in this postseason, like they've done to Cleveland in these 2 games. And everyone who they put on the floor, which is a lot, they go like 10 deep most games. Everyone's athletic, even their big guys. Miles Turner, he can get up and down, and he can shoot a 3. Siakam is the same way. A guy who's won a championship in Toronto was huge with Kawhi in 2019. They're a good team, and I think they're going to win this series. Partly, obviously, they have a 2-game lead, but if the Cavs aren't healthy, Donovan Mitchell's great. I love watching him. A lot like Jimmy Butler in the Warriors series, he can't do it all by himself.
No, and you're going to be on the road now, Cleveland, and if you go down 3-0, I don't know what the statistic is, but what is it? Nobody comes back from 3-0. You know.
I can't remember it in the NBA.
Yeah. Like you're basically.
It's maybe happened once or twice.
Yeah,
so.
you're basically, signing your season is over after that.
Yeah, Game 3 is tonight, along with Thunder Nuggets Game 3, but in Indiana.
Yeah, and that place is going to be on fire. That
place gets going, and also people forget. The Pacers, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year and played against Boston. They got swept. Every single game of that series was close.
Yeah.
They did not get rolled over by the Celtics. Yeah, they got swept, and the Celtics were the better team, obviously. They went on to win the title. But the Pacers, they didn't roll over. So they're not going to roll over. Big one tonight in Indianapolis. The juiciest series in the NBA, Knicks Celtics. 1, because it's New York and Boston. And 2, because the Celtics are the defending champs. And
Jalen Brunson.
When healthy, the Celtics are the best team in the East without a doubt. They're probably only second this year to the Thunder because they're really, really, really talented.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they shoot a lot of threes, but they make a lot of threes.
Yeah,
they get a lot of open threes. That was the discussion after Game 1 when they were 15 for 60 from 3. Why did you keep taking all those threes?
Yeah.
They had a 20-point lead late in the third quarter. Evaporated. And that's when Jalen Brunson went off. He won Clutch Player of the Year in the NBA. I don't even know what that means. It sounds cool that he's clutch, but he's clearly very clutch.
Yeah. I mean,
After what he did in Game 1, where Boston, Porzingis was barely a factor. He's sick or something, and they're all dealing with something, Jaylen Brown's wrist or whatever, but you just got to play
through it almost.
You got to play through it, and you got to play like you did during the regular season and in the playoffs last year. Jason Tatum, go to the rim.
Yeah, stop shooting threes, man.
I don't get it. I know that's how they have won games the last 2 years, but when it's not working, you're still a really good basketball team when you're not shooting 60 threes. So they shoot 40 in Game 2. They go up 20 late in the third quarter, and the Knicks just don't go away. They play tough defense. They get after loose balls. It's like the fundamentals, and the Celtics completely have forgotten how to play with fundamentals. And offensive rebounds, that's really how the Pacers made that miraculous final minute comeback against the Cavs. 2 offensive rebounds. That's 2 extra possessions late in the game, and they scored on those. And the Celtics, they have trouble with Cat when he's doing the high pick and roll with Brunson, and it's so predictable, but they still have trouble with it. And then in game 2, Mikal Bridges was really the guy that went off. He had 14 in the fourth quarter, and he's made the plays in both game 1 and game 2. Defensively, the final possession of the game for the Celtics, in game 1, he stole the ball from Jaylen Brown. In game 2, he stole the ball from Jason Tatum. It's pretty unbelievable, man. And the Celtics down the stretch, I don't get it. In game 1, they had a timeout left when things broke down. In game 2, the second to last possession, they had Horford set a screen for Tatum going full court, and the Knicks were picking up in the backcourt, where Horford set a screen at half court and Tatum was just to the rim, and they took back the lead. And then the final possession, the screen was down by the three-point line. If you watch it back, Tatum loses the ball a little bit. He might have been able to get to the rim or draw Bridges earlier to find Brown, and that's when he went up. It looked like he was going to shoot it, but he was actually trying to get the pass off to Brown for the three. Obviously, he didn't get it there because Bridges got his hand on the ball. That broke down. So you're like, you can't believe it. To these best players in the world, guys who have a ring from last year, can't get a shot up on the final possession, 2 games in a row, and they blow 2 20-point leads. It's mind-boggling.
And I'll give you the same scenario that I said for the Pacers and the Cavaliers. If the Celtics don't get this next one,
no, you're right.
You could be closing the door on your season.
It's funny, 2 years ago they went down 3-0 to the Heat, forced a Game 7, and then lose. Remember that crazy Derek White put back in Game 6? So they forced a Game 7 after being down 0-3. But, yeah, if you go down 3-0, you're doomed.
Even if you win one, odds are not stacked.
And that's the funny thing in the East. That game's tomorrow afternoon at the Garden. You're down 0-2 going on the road. I know you're the Celtics.
And it's the Garden.
You're the best team on paper. Yeah, that place is going to be rabid.
Yeah.
Rabid, inside and out.
Yeah.
Knicks fans haven't been this hyped in, 30 years.
Since Carmelo was...
This is the round they got knocked out in last year, and they didn't really have much of a fighting chance in that series.
So who's your finals pick that you?
I should say they were playing the Pacers. It was a series.
Now as we've got 8 teams left.
I picked the Celtics and the Thunder. I'm going to stick with the Thunder. After they tied it up at 1, I still think they win that series.
Yeah.
I have the good thing about the Pacers and the Knicks going up 2-0 is that pretty much guaranteed 6-game series at least. Like, I still expect the Cavs and the Celtics to win at least 1, probably 2, get it to 6 games. But down 2-0 in the East, I'm going to say at this point, May 9th, the Thunder are going to play the Pacers in the NBA Finals.
That might be spot on too, and I'm just going to reverse it. I'm going to take the Knicks and the Thunder right now where we're at. I just think. And
I would take the Thunder over the Pacers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cameron, let's go Indiana. That place is going to be rocking tonight.
Yeah. Give me the Knicks and the Thunder. I mean, I don't think. I think the Thunder shaking the rust
I'm going
off.
with the Pacers over the Knicks because the Knicks, they are not deep.
They're not deep.
I think they might run out of gas in this series with Celtics, and Celtics will move on, or they'll run out of gas in the next series. There's some magic there. There's something going on.
Yeah. Something in the water.
We should mention the Pope also went to Villanova, like Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges.
Fair enough.
So maybe there's something there. God is on their side a little bit. But yeah, I think the Pacers are deeper and they would win a series with the Knicks. That's just where I'm going right now. Both Cleveland and Boston are 5.5-point favorites in Game 3 on their home floor. I think they both win Game 3. That's my prediction.
That's fair.
Yeah, we're moving to Thunder Pacers in the NBA Finals. Can you believe that? Let's talk hockey because this has been thoroughly entertaining Stanley Cup playoffs thus far. And I want to start in the East because, Keegan, is it the Leafs' year? They're up 2-0 on the defending Stanley Cup champion, Florida Panthers.
It could be.
Normally they don't make it out of the first round. You know, they win the first 3 against the Senators in the first round, then they lose 2, and you're like, oh no, Toronto's doing it again. But they win that one 6, take the first 2 off of Florida. William Nylander's playing out of his mind. Look, in hockey, when you got names that do cool things in the playoffs, you're probably going to have my support in predicting that you're going to go far. Because Mitch Marner had a kid the other day. He scored in Game 2. And, of course, they have Austin Matthews, who, like, our American guy who let us down a little bit in the Four Nations. He's still an incredible player. Leafs up 2-0. Is it their year? I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of the same with the NBA playoffs. You're down 2-0. In hockey, it is another beast of an animal when you think of intensity and endurance and stuff like that. You're down 2-0. You don't have much motivation right now thinking you're going to win the series after you lost the first 2, where Toronto has all the motivation, and they're hungry for it because, like you said, they usually get knocked out in the first round and their playoff run is over. So it could be their year. I don't know, Florida, you got to pick it up.
They do. And I do think, like we were just talking in the NBA, I think they'll make it a series because they're too good not to.
Yeah.
Especially having Marchand now, just that championship experience from the Bruins on top of all the guys that won a cup in Florida last year, and Tkachuk and goalie Bob Bobrovsky is still one of the best goaltenders around. We'll talk about goaltenders in the West. But, yeah, I like the Leafs to move on at this point, but I think the Panthers will make it a series as that series moves for Game 3. Caps Hurricanes tied at 1. Caps had a crazy year. I don't know a ton about the Hurricanes, and I don't like them to move on in the series. I think the Caps, maybe not their year. I'm picking right now. I'm picking the Maple Leafs
to win it all,
to go to the Cup at least. But the Caps, Tom Wilson last night. He's had a great year. He's like 33. He's had his best year. Obviously, Ovi had at least 2 or 3 goals in that first-round series with the Canadians. So Caps even it up with the Hurricanes last night. That place was rocking in Washington. So I like the Caps to move on. That should be a good series, too. It's tied up at 1 heading to Carolina right now. So let's go to the West. Golden Knights, Oilers. Oilers find a way in Game 6. Jim Hiller, 1991 national champion at NMU, is the coach of the Kings. I thought they were going to move on. But that series only goes 6 games. The Oilers flipped a switch. They weren't that great in the regular season. Disappointment coming off of their Cup appearance last year. But they have Connor McDavid. And they have Leon Draisaitl, and now they have a 2-game lead against the Golden Knights, who were probably the favorite to win the Cup heading into this postseason. But it's the Oilers, and they have McJesus.
Yeah, it's playoff hockey, and if you get hot, you get hot in Toronto.
And it hasn't
and the Oilers are hot.
It's not like all McDavid is the reason they're up 2-0. It's just the fact that they're up 2-0, and they have McDavid.
Yeah, so I think it becomes a series, but I still think the Oilers pull this out. It's just how good are you playing in the playoffs? And right now, Toronto, arguably, in my opinion, Toronto and the Oilers are the best 2 teams in the playoffs right now, the way that they're playing.
That'd be a crazy Cup. It would be guaranteed the first Canadian Cup since '93, which would be crazy. And let's shift over to Jet Stars. This is my favorite series, and I think the winner of this series is going to the Stanley Cup. Game 1, Mikko Rantanen Talk about a guy on a heater. I was talking about Nylander being on a heater. No one's playing like Rantanen right now. Obviously won a cup in 22 in Colorado. Has to take down his old team in Game 7 in the first round with a hattie.
Yeah.
I mean, that was incredible. It was the empty netter that got him the third goal. But, I mean, they were down 2 goals in the third period in that Game 7 against the Avs. I thought it was over. It was not. And the Stars and Wyatt Johnston, the youngster, I think he's 21, had the game winner removed from the Rantanen hat trick. And then Rantanen goes off again and scores again in Game 1 against Winnipeg. I'm right now I'm taking the Stars over the Leafs in the Stanley Cup final. And yeah, that would mean another year without the cup for Canada.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because you want to give the edge to the teams who are probably the favorites, but if you're not playing well, even if you are the best team, you can't do it. I do think the Stars, I think the Stars kind of own that.
Although I don't like their jerseys or their logo.
The Stars?
Yeah.
No?
I see their jerseys, and I just see Blackhawks St. Patrick's Day jerseys.
Fair. I do know what you're talking about.
And that doesn't instill a lot of confidence for me personally. And I like their old logo, the new like chrome D. I'm kind of out on that. So yeah, but Rantanen's playing out of his mind. Obviously 3 goals in Game 1. But the Jets, to even be here, we got to go back to Sunday, Game 7. They're down 2 to St. Louis. They're at home in Game 7. They get the first one. Now you got, of course, an empty net on the other side. 1.6 left on the clock, and they tie it and go to overtime.
Yeah.
The place is going bananas.
Yeah.
Because you never think that's going to happen. I mean, there was one wave from the point, puck comes right back out, and then a great pass cross ice to get the goal in the nick of time. And then it goes to double overtime. And finally, Winnipeg comes out on top. I don't like the Blues. We've had some.
I like the Blues.
We've had some.
Yeah,
some tussles in the
battles.
postseason between the Blackhawks and the Blues. Yeah, it was a tough one for St. Louis, and that goaltending matchup. Binnington, obviously, was Canada's goaltender in the Four Nations. Probably the best Canadian goaltender, and then Hellebuck, the American, who was the best goaltender in the regular season by far, never got pulled during the regular season. Got pulled 3 times in that first round series, which of course went 7 games. I thought they were going to pull him in Game 7 too, because he gave up 2 early ones, but then he stood pat. You know, Blues got to 3. And it was 3-1. Still thought it was over. But he stuck it in, when they're in St. Louis, the whole arena just saying, Connor, Connor. Like, that gets in your head. And obviously, goaltending is a total mental thing.
Game.
It's like pitching. Yep. So, and credit to him, the fact that they're moving on to play the Stars is just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So, what's your pick?
I'm going, give me Oilers, Toronto. Toronto over the Oilers. I think so. I think I think those 2 teams.
Okay.
They may not be the best teams.
That's fun.
They may not be the best teams, but I think they're playing the best right now.
That's fun. I like the Stars. Rantanen. It was a natty hattie in Game 1. I should have mentioned that. 3 in a row, all for him, which is a lot more fun than any other hat trick. Before we go, we should touch on Major League Baseball because the Tigers are playing some ball. And it certainly helps when you're playing the 6 and now 31 Colorado Rockies. Yeah. I should just say, as a Chicago White Sox fan, that thank you to the Rockies for completely taking the headlines away from the White Sox about being the worst team ever, because they have a real good chance to make history 1 year after the Sox made history and win less than 41 games as I mentioned, they're 6-31. But the Tigers, all these bats in their lineup, which you saw them doing it at the tail end of last year, and you're like, how sustainable is this? But everyone is hitting. They scored 10-plus runs, 10 in the first game, 11 in Game 2 of that doubleheader yesterday. Ben Kuchner-Kavich, our MLB historian, he texted me, the first time the Tigers have scored 10-plus runs in both games of a doubleheader since August 31st, 1947.
Jeez.
So a historic day for the Tigers yesterday. I mean, the Rockies are a joke, but you look at what Javi Baez is doing, playing a really good center field.
Yeah.
Never played outfield in his life. He got the nickname El Mago for playing shortstop for the Cubs. And now he's El Mago in the outfield. He robbed that homer in Anaheim. I like where the Tigers are at. And everyone is hot in the AL Central besides the Sox. Detroit's won 4 in a row. Cleveland's won 2 in a row. Kansas City's won 6 in a row. They're playing really well. And Minnesota, even though they're still below 500, has won 5 in a row. So it's going to take the whole season. But you look at where the Tigers are at. They've won 7 out of 8. And they're top the division, and they're top the American League. And now they're going to play Texas, who looks to be kind of disappointing again.
Yeah, and I mean, the bats are there for the Tigers, but then you get Scooble on the mound, and I mean,
having that guy every 5th day is
it's a win. It's a win.
Such a difference.
I think anytime he pitches, you can probably 60% of the time put it down as a win for the Tigers.
And he's such a psycho. I mean, he pitched in Anaheim. He gave up the first inning home run to Neto. I watched the John Boy breakdown. Remember the benches cleared? Nothing happened. But he was talking to Neto after he rounded the bases. You know, just competitive. Like,
riff-raff,
F you, you're not going to do that again, whatnot. Benches come out, and then Scooble acknowledges that he's just kind of a psycho on the mound. And after everyone goes back to the benches, he looks at the dugout and just says, my bad. My bad for chirping you after he hit a home run. In that game, he didn't give up another run. Yeah. And that was the game where the Tigers went to the 9th, tied at 1, and they scored, 9 in the 9th inning? Yeah. And Riley Green becomes the first player ever to hit 2 home runs in the 9th inning of a game.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
Don't make him angry.
Yeah, you say that about Scooble when he's out there every 5th day. You have to feel good because you're like,
this guy's.
Let's score 2 runs and we're good. Let's get out of here. And that's kind of, I told you last year, he reminded me of Jake Arrieta, this guy who gets to his late 20s and is finally fully developed. And his throwing motion on the mound is so violent. That really stands out to me when I watch him pitch. It's like, how do you see the ball coming in? One at 97 most of the time is where his fastball is coming in. And like I said, he's just so violent of a pitcher. And,
he throws like
a
he's
lefty
angry
at the top of your rotation, you can't beat that. And his legs are like tree trunks. So he gets so much power from his legs. I love watching the guy pitch, especially when you get a lefty that locates. Like he does too, because he wouldn't be a great pitcher if he didn't locate at the top of the league. I have a soft spot in my heart when you're dialing it up like that. Man, it's fun to watch, and I think Job will get there. He had a rough start in Colorado the other day, but he's 22, and he'll come along. And I think getting Flaherty back in the offseason was huge. I mean, they dealt him to the Dodgers. He got a World Series ring for his hometown team. But then they're like, hey, come on back.
Yep.
Can you imagine if they traded Scooble last year at the deadline?
That would have been insane.
Their fans would have revolted, or at least they should have, because they're not where they are this year at 25-13 if they trade Tarek Scooble. That is for darn sure. And the Brewers at 19-19, they're 3 games back of the Cubs. I think they're just kind of treading water.
Yeah, I think it's.
I fear about their pitching.
Chicago's division will lose, in my opinion. The Cardinals.
I agree.
and the Brewers are both like
Yeah.
could win it, but they're not good enough to win it right now. And then, obviously Pittsburgh is bad, and Cincinnati is not that far behind.
Yeah, Cincinnati's another team. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Because every year we're like, ooh, the Reds, maybe. But outside of the Brewers and the Cubs, the last couple of years, it's really that's a bad division.
Yeah, it is a bad division, and
because you never expect the Cardinals to be bad, but they have been.
Yeah,
right now they're tied with the Brewers. They're also 500. But
it was the late 2000 teens, 2011, 12, those years were the Cardinals' years, and now it's like, what are we doing? Oh, we're rebuilding, but are you?
It's strange. It's strange to me. And obviously Arenado's still there. You still have him on the books.
You got Newt Barr, but Lars, but like.
Yeah, and
that's it.
They haven't been in on the big free agents.
Mm-mm.
I mean, they got Wilson Contreras from the Cubs, but
that's about it.
Again, no one to move the needle, so that's a little puzzling. But yeah, the Cubs look very legit. They did lose Trevor Steele for the season, but they score almost 6 runs a game. And Kyle Tucker's playing at an MVP level, and then Pete Crow Armstrong looking like an all-star. I mean, when they were in Milwaukee, Friday and Saturday, the Cubs just beat the brakes off of Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. And Pete Crow Armstrong hitting for power. He plays the best center field in baseball, probably. In my opinion, he just gets to balls that no other guy can get to. Mm-hmm. So he's an elite defender, so even if his bat falls off a little bit, he's still worth it and is pacing to be like a 6-win player this year, and that's huge. So the Cubs will probably also need to bolster their pitching staff, especially their bullpen, by the time the deadline rolls around. But that'll be tough for the Brewers to catch them. Hopefully it's a fun race over the course of the season. You just look at their run differential. The Cubs are plus 58, and the Brewers are plus 3. Granted, they're only 3 games back, so that's pretty impressive. But at the end of the day, it's like there seems to be a significant gap there between Chicago and Milwaukee.
And then you look at the Cardinals, and the Cardinals cannot win on the road. 4-13 on the road, just atrocious. It's sad.
That's brutal.
Like,
That's brutal.
I mean, you're at a disadvantage because you're on the road. I mean, Milwaukee at 7-12 on the road. You got to win games on the road, especially in the regular season. You got to figure out how to do it.
And the other thing with the Brewers, if they're chasing a wild card spot and the Cubs are not to be caught come later in the season, you have 3 teams in the West that are going to be in the mix too. Mm-hmm. I imagine the Dodgers are going to end up running away with that division, even though it's only a 1-game lead over the Padres and the Giants right now. That division's stacked, and they're going to win every game against the Rockies. So the 4 teams in that division, the Dodgers are in first right now. I just can't imagine that changes come September. So you throw the Brewers in the mix with not only the Padres, Giants, Diamondbacks, but probably the Phillies and the Braves in the East. It's like, it's going to be tough when there's only 3 wild card spots up for grabs.
Colorado's differential is minus 109.
That's crazy. See, the White Sox only have 10 wins, but they're only minus 39 because they've won like 8 of their 10 games by 5+ runs or something like that.
There we go.
Which is just ironic and funny. And that should do it for this edition of the pod. Catch all our coverage this weekend. You were out at the golf course today in Munising, watching some high school golf, and then we'll be out at the Nagani track meet in a couple minutes, so we'll have highlights of that tonight as well, and then everything coming on Saturday with the FC softball tournament and the UP Sports Hall of Fame. Congrats to all those going in this year, the class of 2025. So for Keegan Cooper, I'm Kevin McNulty, and we will see you next week.